May 24th, 2021. I'm Diane Barrett. I'm here with Beth Maples-Bays, and we're interviewing Beth today for the BE collection. So thank you.
Well, hello, Diane.
Hello, Beth. And I have not received your signed consent yet, so we can wait for that, but I'd like you to give us verbal consent to go ahead with the interview.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Have you dropped it in the mail yet?
No, it's on the piano, ready to go.
Okay. Send some music with it. Okay, well, that's fine. So we'll expect it, but in the meantime, we have your verbal consent. So that's good. So my first question is, where were you born?
I was born here in Knoxville, Tennessee, where I live right now.
Uh-huh.
I lived here for the first 7 years of my life, and then we moved a whopping 25 miles away. And I lived there until I was, well, about 16.
Mhm.
And there were lots of
Did
things
you have
going on
siblings?
in my life at that time. My mother was a victim of domestic violence. She was murdered when I was 19 by the man she was married to.
She was murdered?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, how awful.
So that when I was 19, I left the state. I was gone for about 10 years. And
Wow.
and that was 71. We'll just jump right ahead to 1978. That's when I came out.
A better time. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have siblings?
Did I have
You have brothers
siblings?
and sisters?
I had
Siblings.
I had brothers, stepbrothers, and half brothers. And I was
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. I was not close to any of them. And I have that has been true throughout my life. I have not been close to any of them. Three of them were the sons of the man who murdered my mother, and he was allowed to keep custody of them after he murdered her. The East Tennessee at that time, it was beyond the dark ages. It was a horrible place to live, frankly. Especially if you're struggling with your sexual orientation or even just being a woman here was, not good at all. I grew up in the Southern Baptist environment in a town of 5,000, 3,000 people went to the same church, First Baptist Church.
Wow.
And of the remaining 2,000, 1,500 went to another Baptist church. So it was a dark time in my life, my growing up years after my father died. My father died when I was 5 in a car accident.
How about you? Did you go to church?
I'm sorry, what?
Wow. Did you go to church? Did you go to church?
Did I go to church? Oh, absolutely.
Right.
You didn't have a social life if you didn't go to church. You weren't accepted in the social fabric unless you went to church. That was just a fact of life. But again, I'd like to move on to 1978.
Fine, that's good. Let's do that. That was a good year for me too.
1978, I came out in a place called Missoula, Montana, in the Pacific Northwest, a little blue mecca in a great big red state. I came out and had some wonderful role models to follow. The primary one was a woman named Diane Sands, who is now a Montana state legislator.
Huh.
Um, I I became part of a collective called Women's Place, and we did rape crisis, domestic violence, and pregnancy options counseling and referrals. Um, I was part of something called the Gay Women's Rap Group. Uh,
Huh.
it was a good time to be a lesbian feminist, and that was indeed what I was.
Mhm. When did you know that you were a lesbian?
When did
How
I know?
old were you?
Well,
Yeah.
I knew when I was like around 15, but
Mhm.
like so many women of my generation, and especially living in the South, I got married to a man. I had two
Right.
children, and
Uh-huh.
that that didn't last too long. But I did have two children, and
Uh-huh.
so when the whole scenario in that marriage was horrible, and it would be a big,
Huh. Sorry.
we would have to really digress to go into that. But
That's
let's go back to Missoula. And
okay. Right. I have your
Missoula,
time.
yeah, Missoula was a wonderful place for me to come out and to there. There was a women's center. The University of Montana is in Missoula, and there was a women's center at the University of Montana. Um, it was very lesbian oriented. They produced Meg Christian, and I got to see her in concert. Uh,
Oh, really?
I,
Good.
yes, and it was just wonderful. There was in 1979 there was a Montana Women's Festival, and it was attended by about 500 women. There were some names there that are familiar to women of our generation. Robin Flowers and Friends were there. Robin Tyler was there, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven.
So what's your favorite, Meg, what was your favorite Meg Christian song?
My favorite
Yeah,
Meg Christian, Ode to a Gym Teacher, of course. Actually, yeah, I always say that. And Leaping Lesbians.
And what? What was the other one?
Leaping Lesbians.
Leaping Lesbians, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It was just a wonderful time for me. It shaped my psyche for the years to come, where my identity would really be challenged in a way that I hadn't anticipated. You know, when I had to leave Montana, I had to leave because my children had been kidnapped by their father.
Oh no.
So we didn't have I didn't have a choice. I had to leave.
Oh wow.
That was the longest 6 weeks of my life.
I bet.
It was horrible.
Yeah.
And I finally convinced my ex-husband to come here to Knoxville.
So what happened to your children?
My children, I regained physical custody of my children when I got back to Knoxville. My grandparents lived here in the house where I live now. And we didn't have any problems physically getting the children back. Now, the legalities were a whole different ballgame. Julie and I wound up back here in Knoxville, and when we got here, we were in for a real shock. The community here was nothing like the community in Missoula.
Right.
The community here consisted of MCC and gay bars that were owned by men.
Uh,
That's it. There were no women's centers. There were no lesbian dances. There was no gay women's right. It was a whole different culture.
no?
And it was like walking back into the 1950s.
Your children returned to you when you went back to Knoxville?
When my children were with me here in Knoxville,
I see.
and I was having to co-parent with my ex-husband. I had a book called Mothers on Trial by Phyllis Chesler. And in the back of it, this was long before the internet, in the back of it, there was a list of resources. And one of those resources that was listed was Lesbian Legal Defense Fund in
Good.
San Francisco, California.
Mhm.
And I called the number and spoke to someone named Roberta Ochtenberg, who was later Assistant Secretary for Health and Human Services under Bill Clinton. But what she told me, she explained to me about suborning perjury. And in essence, she told me how to talk to the lawyer, how to get a lawyer
Good.
without,
Uh-huh.
messing myself up.
Good.
And so I didn't have a lot of money, so I wound up with a legal aid attorney, and he had a private lawyer. And long story short, the judge, I was accused of being a lesbian in open court. And the judge shook his finger in my face and said, "Young lady, if this is true, you will never see your children again."
Whoa.
So when I left that courtroom,
yeah,
I, against my lawyer's wishes, I settled for joint custody. I thought joint custody was better than no custody.
right.
And so that's how that turned out.
That was in 1981?
That was in, yes, December of 81. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, in July of 81, I started school at the University of Tennessee. It had been a long time since I'd had my ACT, which they didn't use SAT here, they used ACT. And I didn't want to have to go through the whole thing of taking the test again. So I just enrolled as an adult non-degree seeking student. I took a full load and got a 4.0 and wound up getting a $500 grant from Alcoa Foundation.
Good.
And that was the first session. Second session, I took another full load, continued with the 4.0. And because I now had a GPA, they let me register as a regular student. So
right.
I circumvented the little rules.
I know. Good.
I did go on to school, and while I majored in nursing, by the way, I had a concentration in women's studies, but I majored in nursing. And while I was in my lower division courses, I was the undergraduate representative to the Women's Commission, the University of Tennessee Commission for Women. And what we did while I was part of the commission is we put blue light telephones all over campus to make it safer for women at night. But I'm leaving some things out.
That's all right.
Right about the same time, I was really tired of the fact that there were no lesbian there was no lesbian community here.
Yeah, it didn't sound like it. Even
There
on
was,
campus.
there was, there was just nothing here. And so I decided I was going to do something about that.
Good.
And the very first lesbian organization that had existed in East Tennessee was an organization called East Tennessee Alliance of Lesbian Activists. Well, it was defunct by that time, and I got in touch with the woman who had headed that up, and she gave me their mailing list.
Huh. So when
And
you look back on your career, was there a woman or man even that was inspiring you and helping you court chart your course, so to speak?
no,
No,
no, not
no
a
one
single
person
person. There was
inspired.
nobody here.
Just you, right?
Yeah, it was just me.
Were you in a
And
relationship at that time?
yes, I was.
Uh-huh.
My partner that had come down with me from Montana,
Mhm.
we were together for 10 years.
Ah,
She was 21 and I was 26 when we got
ah,
together.
good.
And to be that young, 10 years is a long time.
Right. That's a lot.
So I got on the phone and I
So
called.
what year was that you were starting that organization?
Yes, I got on the phone. I started calling people,
Mhm.
and I organized a meeting. And out of that meeting, 50 women showed up, and we started something called Mountain Women's Coalition, and that's
Ah,
women with a Y.
okay, so
Uh,
what year was that?
that was in 82.
Okay, I'm interested in the chronology stuff. That's why I asked.
Okay.
Okay.
And I may have to refer to my phone at some
No,
point.
that's okay. I just a general, yeah.
Well, let's see. The first project we did, I had spoken to the director of the Women's Center at UT about forming this organization and wanting to have a project to do. And we produced Kate Clinton that year in a little tiny building that was rented out to us by the Black community. It was they were the only ones who would rent to us.
I got it.
And that organization went on to be functional for about 7 years.
Did you earn a degree in a specific area?
When I was in college, I was a nursing major.
But
And,
did you complete
and
that? So
I was a nursing major.
I know, but are you a nurse?
Yeah, yes, I
Okay.
graduated summa cum laude
Ah,
in
good for you.
1986.
That's one thing I forgot to ask you, your official occupation, your career.
Well, I was a nurse,
Okay.
but I became disabled. That's another story. But yes, I was a nurse, and I worked for I worked in critical care.
Okay. So you're an RN.
Yes.
Good.
Well, I'm an RN with a BSN,
Okay.
and I was inducted into Sigma Theta Tau, which is the Nursing Honor Society, my junior year.
Good for you.
Quite an honor because most people don't get inducted until their senior year. But
You've always been outstanding.
they thought they were going to get rid of me. That
No
nursing
way.
school did.
How come?
I told because of my hearing. When we
Oh,
progressed from lower division to upper division courses, which is when you start clinical, you have to take a physical examination.
I see.
And that's when it was discovered that I had a hearing loss. I had a hearing loss from the time I was 7 years old because I had measles in 1959.
Mhm.
And it had never stopped me, and it wasn't going to stop me at that point either.
Was your vision a problem at that time?
No, at that point, I really didn't have, I had a little bit of vision impairment, but not much. So
So you
when,
graduated, and then did you work in critical care?
yes, I worked in critical care. I started out in medical surgical nursing. I went on and I worked in critical care. And at the same time I was working in critical care, I also worked part-time at Planned Parenthood.
Uh-huh.
In addition to that, I worked at a volunteer medical clinic, which was an abortion clinic, women's pregnancy termination services. I told myself when I went to nursing school that I was going to learn how to do abortion in case they were ever made illegal. I would know how to do them,
Yeah,
or be able to
right.
teach someone else how to do them, because and it looks like we might be facing that in the future.
I know. So did you actually do abortions?
Did I do abortion? No, 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 no.
Yeah.
They had medical doctors there who
Yes.
did abortion. I would assess the
Right.
patient and
Uh-huh.
do follow up on the patients afterward.
Uh-huh.
But at Planned Parenthood, I did family planning.
I see.
But
And at this time, were your children grown by now? Were your children on their
well,
own?
they were in high school by then. My children are now in their 40s, but
Ah,
I had them young. I was 21 and 23 when they were born. Yes,
girls?
yes, I had a girl and a boy, and
Huh?
and I have one granddaughter and one grandson, and both
Ah,
of them are
great.
adopted. And I'm proud to say.
Lesbian Echoes. When did you begin that?
Oh, well, I just recently started that. I've only done I think about 8 episodes. Um, I really tried to get a good mix of ordinary women and women with some renown. Um,
But all lesbians.
Yeah, oh yes. Um,
Ah,
I think it's important for young lesbians and lesbians who are just coming out to have role models. And
I agree.
the only role models that many of them see are Ellen and Rachel Maddow. And I wanted to make it make other role models available. Learning how to do this podcast has really opened up an avenue for activism for me again, because
Good.
I am limited with my sensory impairments.
Uh-huh.
The internet is a great leveler for me.
Uh-huh.
It,
So does the podcast bring you more people that are interested, or do you think that's been the most effective recruitment?
well, I think it's a good way to get people to get role models out there. I have a Facebook page, and I have, I don't know, 1,500 friends,
I saw
something
that.
like that.
That's great.
And I also have a
Uh-huh.
Twitter account for Lesbian Echoes, and I've been able to get some big voices, Joan Nestle
Great.
and Carolyn Gage, and
Mhm.
I'm going to be interviewing the owner of After Ellen.
Good for you.
I'm really at this point more accustomed to being on your side of the interview.
Do you have a current relationship? Love
Oh yes,
relationship?
yes, I have a partner that we've been together 30 years. Sam is my partner. And Sam has always encouraged me to write. but I can't tell you how many publications I have written for. But the thing that I am most proud of is I became the East Tennessee bureau chief for Out and About newspaper based in Nashville.
Mhm.
And I developed this bureau. We had, I don't know, 8 writers and 3 photographers and a copy editor and
Ah,
me. And
good
that
for you.
was work.
You're a busy woman.
My writing has been something that really has shored me up when things didn't look so good. And the podcast has given me another venue for another creative outlet.
In closing, if you think of your legacy and what you'd like to be remembered for, what would you like to say about that?
Oh, my legacy. I would like to be remembered for being, first and foremost, a lesbian feminist and
Okay.
a recovering trans ally and a current
Mhm.
gender critical feminist.
Okay.
I recently immersed myself in the reading. Well, I do a lot of audio reading, but Julie Bindel, Magdalene Burns, may she rest in peace, and the Women's Liberation Front, Women's Human Rights Campaign. I think that they're doing a really good thing, and I would love to be identified with that. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, and we'll refer to you.
Okay, and I will to you as well.
Okay, well, thank you. And I appreciate this.
All right.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.